I'm going to go back to 1990, my very first day at the CIA. We had a senior FBI agent come to talk to the new hire class. And one of the things that he said has stuck in my mind all of these 32 plus years. We were talking about counterintelligence and the FBI's role in counterintelligence. That is, trying to spot spies who are spying on us, whether they're moles, which is unusual, or intelligence officers of a foreign country. Well, most embassies here in Washington have what are called declared officers. Those are foreign intelligence officers who are here, and they are formally known to the FBI and the CIA as intelligence officers, right? So they're here to exchange paper and liaise and meet with their CIA and FBI counterparts, and then go back to their embassies and write a report and send it back to their capitals. This FBI agent told us at the time that the Israeli embassy was unusual. Now remember, this is 32 years ago, so the information is very old, but just to give you an idea of what we were looking at. The Israeli embassy had 2 declared officers, one from Shin Bet and one from Mossad. And it had 187 undeclared officers that the FBI had been able to identify, spread out all across America, in academia, in the defense contracting industry. We've all seen the Americans, right? The Israelis do the same thing, just like we do the same thing. But we were told that very first day that I was at the agency that we have no international friends. Not really. I mean, you can argue now the Five Eyes, the British, the Australians, New Zealanders, the Canadians. Not the Israelis. The Israelis were a country, a service that we had to be leery of. In some cases, we had to fear. I thought that was probably an overstatement at the time. And after I had been at the CIA for 3 years, I decided I wanted to go overseas. There was a program that the State Department ran called the Analyst Overseas Program, where they'll take CIA analysts and transfer them to the State Department. So you're a legitimate State Department Foreign Service officer, and you go overseas and you work for 2 years in an embassy and then come back and you transfer back to the CIA. So I thought, well, do I want to go to Jerusalem or do I want to go somewhere else? And I decided to go to Bahrain. 2 of the happiest years of my life. The guy that I sat next to for those 3 years, he went to Jerusalem along with his wife. Now, because they had been to Israel before, the CIA decided to declare them as a courtesy and to say, look, we have these 2 people, this married couple, they're not spies. They're analysts. One of them isn't even really an analyst. He's going to go to a graduate school while his wife is doing the analysis. We just want you to know that they're here as a courtesy on assignment to the State Department. What the Israelis did over the next 2 years was to carry out a campaign of harassment. And the reason I bring this up is because it's quite common. I'm telling you this story because this is just a normal thing that happens to Americans, especially to American CIA officers working and living in Israel. They went to a party one night and they came home. It was a party at the ambassador's residence in Tel Aviv. They came home and all of their living room furniture had been rearranged. All of it. So the message was, we can come into your house anytime we want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, that's aggravating a little bit, but no damage done. The next time they went out, they came home and someone had defecated in all of the toilets in their house. They had four bathroom house. And people had gone to the bathroom in all 4 of the toilets and left it unflushed. So another not very nice message that we can harass you anytime we want. The third time it happened, they came home and their dog was yelping and laying on the floor of the kitchen. Someone had cut its tail off and then wrapped it in gauze and tape. And the fourth time it happened to them, they had done their Christmas shopping. They had a tree up in the living room, and they had gone to the ambassador's Christmas party, and when they came back, all of the presents were gone. All of them. $1,000 worth of Christmas presents. Now, this kind of thing happens all the time. And so the ambassador has to go to the Israelis and say, look, cut it out. Leave my people alone. And they say, okay, okay. And then they'll back off for a little while, and then they start up again. I have a friend who was the senior CIA person in country. And he went to work one day, and the ambassador said to him, the craziest thing happened last night. He said, I was in the car, and my driver was driving me home, and I had a blowout. And we had to pull the car over to the side of the road. And it turned out that 2 tires on the right side had blown out. Well, they had been shot out. Have any of you ever, I mean, all of us have blown a tire. Have you ever blown 2 at the same time, just minding your business driving down the highway? Well, sure enough, these 2 men pulled up, and they were so friendly and so warm, and they got out and they helped us change the 1 tire, and then they stayed there until the tow truck came to help us, tow the car to get the 2nd tire replaced. But then the ambassador's briefcase was missing. And in the briefcase were personnel files because he was writing end-of-year performance evaluations. Well, that way, the friendly guys who stopped to help change the tire can determine who's getting a performance evaluation from the ambassador and who's not, because the ones who aren't are CIA officers, right? Because it's the foreign service people who are working for the ambassador. So we don't do things like this to the Israelis, ever. We also don't spy on the Israelis, ever, because of the political pressure that would put the CIA under on Capitol Hill. I made a little note to myself to be sure to talk about the dichotomy between the State Department and CIA on one hand and the White House and Capitol Hill on the other hand. All the years that I worked at the CIA, and being an analyst working on Iraq, an enemy country at the time, I was declared to, oh my God, more foreign intelligence services than I can even remember. It was dozens of them. I only spoke to the Israelis once in 15 years that I was there. I had only been on the job about 6 months. And I was told by my boss, you're going to brief the Israelis this afternoon. I said, okay. And he said, we don't meet with them here in the building. We can't trust them to come into the building. So we're going to meet them out. There's a special place where we meet them. Because they kept trying to bring bugs into the building, right? Oh, we'll give you this gift. Well, the gift weighs twice what it should because it's full of batteries and a listening device, and you can't bring that in here. Once I got overseas, again, I was declared to so many services, and I was working in counterterrorism, and that's where you really want there to be lots and lots of cooperation. So we would get calls, from this country and that country and the other country, and we rarely said no. Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience, when it came time to work with the Palestinians, I'm hard-pressed to think of a group of people who were more committed to counterterrorism, to peace. I mean, it was revelatory for me. It was a group of people who wanted to do the right thing. They wanted good relations. They wanted progress for their people. They wanted to have a role in the international community, and it was a joy to work with them. That was between 1998 and 2000, and I thought, wow, that was really great. I wonder if that was an anomaly. And then I went to Pakistan in 2002 as the chief of counterterrorism operations. And it got to the point where the Palestinians would come to the embassy and they would just wave them in. Come on in. Because they belonged there. We were partners. We were a team. That was the case at the CIA, and it was also the case at the State Department. Now, this note that I wrote to myself, to be sure to explain the dichotomy, is that it was exactly the opposite at the White House and on Capitol Hill. Because we didn't have to answer to voters at the CIA, right? I don't care what, AIPAC says about me if I'm at the CIA. I don't care. I have a job to do. And I was bound to do it. The State Department was the same way. And the State Department was often criticized for something called clientitis. You hear this a lot at the State Department, that people go to Israel and they serve for a couple of years, and then they come out like really disliking Israelis and really loving Palestinians. And then they say, okay, well then you need to go to Berlin for a couple of years to cool off. Because we can't have all these Arab lovers in the... Well, it turns out that the whole State Department loves Arabs. It's just a completely different world. It's hard to describe. And then you go to the White House, especially to the National Security Council, to work with those people who have these fancy titles of senior assistant to the president for such and such affairs and assistant to the president, and you say this is the way things should be in our policy on the Levant or the Maghreb or whatever it is, and they don't want to hear it because you like Arabs too much. Well, with that said, we all just accepted it. And frankly, we all believed that we were right and the White House was wrong. Capitol Hill, forget it, it's a lost cause. I've been noted for refusing to undertake the CIA's enhanced interrogation training on terror suspects. Yes, I did. I called it a torture program. I had just returned from Pakistan, where I had led this raid that resulted in the capture of Abu Zubaydah, who's in the news today because he lost his final case at the Supreme Court yesterday. And I was asked if I wanted to be trained in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. I'd never heard the term before. And so I asked what it meant. And my colleague said very excitedly, "We're going to start getting rough with these guys." And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And he explained it to me. I said, "That sounds like a torture program. Are you crazy?" And he said, "No, it's not a torture program. The president said we could do it, and the Justice Department approved it." I said, "I don't know, man. That sounds like a torture program. I don't think I want to have anything to do with it." I said I had a moral and ethical problem with it. And so I'm embarrassed to tell you that of the 14 people who were asked, I was the only one who said no. And these were people that I no, thank you. These were people that I traveled with, and our wives were friends, and our kids played together, and they were normal people to me, and it was a shock that they could turn it off and become monsters when they had to. Murderers in cold blood. This final question is, did we learn this from the Israelis? Of course we did. We saw what the Israelis were getting away with in these prisons that they had in the West Bank and in Gaza. Nobody raised any objection at all. And so we thought, well, if the Israelis can do it, we can do it. And the president said we could, and the Justice Department said we could. And so we did. Now, of course, we have to take the CIA's word for it. They say they're not doing it anymore. We don't know.
Brass Check TV, free to you, not free to us. We've got a server bill, we've got an email software bill, we've got a tech helper bill, and that happens every month. So to everybody that is supporting us financially, that's paying for their subscription in one way or another, we really appreciate it. If you're not, consider doing so. Everybody's got money for the newspaper and the cable bill and all that. Do you have money for media that's actually serving you? That's really the issue here. And when you help us, it allows us to get this information out to the world. So thanks to all our supporters, and if you're not a supporter already, please consider becoming one.